Through the ups and downs, we stand tall in this journey of growth. Day by day, through the ups and downs, we stand tall in this journey of
Good morning.
day by day.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yourself?
Not too shabby this morning. Not too shabby.
So we once
Whatever time.
asked my cousin, "How are you?" And he said, "Yeah, fantastic, really great." So positive. I want to start doing that.
Not too shabby. Mustn't grumble. Looking forward to the earlier,
Fabulous.
lighter days, the
Oh, aren't we
sunrises.
all? Yeah, and lack of no rain because that is
That was very
inhibiting.
annoying yesterday. It was horizontal and went in my ear down at the beach yesterday.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Took me a while to recover from that. Took me a while. I'm here now, though, so you're welcome.
And your clothes. Was it stormy?
Well, it was very windy. I don't know what class is the storm. Do we know what
Did
class is
your
the storm?
did your non-owned fence panels fall down?
No, and Alexa's not in here. I must have her in the room. But Alexa didn't warn me again. There was another storm, so
Have you asked her why?
she said she couldn't answer that. I did ask her.
It's not
I
on.
can't help you with that right now. Something like that. I'd question her again if she was in here, but she's not.
Maybe you need to move on from Alexa.
I have already. She's dust now.
Oh,
Got my new friend
oh.
ChatGPT, who I was voice noting last night.
ChatGPT doesn't have an Alexa type system yet, does it?
It does. It talks back to you on
But
the
not
app.
I know.
No, not
But
as
not a
interactive
speaker.
as Alexa.
Yeah. Not that we can play music and do things from.
No, that's a shame because I'd be all over that.
Well, she's going to become like the iPods. She'll be like the iPod.
Yeah.
Well, you're saying that like I
Still
know
in the back
this
of the
for
drawer.
real. But whilst ChatGPT will be doing everything like the phone, the iPod
So
will just do the music.
do you think then we will need because what we're talking about today is going to be our on people with no inner monologue. Is that
That's
visual
Alexa.
versus? Yeah, but that's what I mean. Is that what are we going to outsource our inner thinking to these chats now?
I think
I know that
some
I
of
do
us
it
already
quite a bit.
have. Yeah, definitely. Well, okay, let's talk about that. But let's talk. I was hoping you would give us a little synopsis of your book that you're reading at the moment, because you're obviously quite passionate about it.
I'm loving it. It's just a nice book. I think I read far too much study type stuff. And then I found this book and it's come to me from I can't think what I was in some group reading about something I was interested in, and then they said about ideas and how ideas come and go and different ideas come to people at different times, and it's whether or not you action them. And this has come to me in other sort of walks as well, like with other beliefs that I've got, maybe that if you and other things that I've heard are if you take action on an idea, like 80% of the action, say on something, like even writing something or just any idea that you get and you take it, and it happens a lot with writers apparently and poets, and they'll get these ideas and then they'll either take them or they'll and action them or they'll leave them. And in this book it's called Big Magic, and it's basically
Written by who?
saying that is it Liz Gilbert? I'm just trying it's on my Kindle, you see.
Oh, it's who also wrote.
Yeah, Liz Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Eat, Pray, Love, which is a book I haven't read that I want to read. I've seen the film, but I haven't read the book. So, but yeah, so it's just written in such lovely words that it's like it just flows through, and it's all about how the magic of ideas and how you take them and what and your purpose in life and things like that. So it's just a lovely book. It's just really nice.
Is it a self-help
Um,
book? Would you call it?
I don't think it's meant to be, but I think it kind of is. In if you don't, it's well. So the title on it is "How to Live a Creative Life and Let Go of Your Fear." So it's more. letting go of what the outcome will be and just taking an idea and just going with it. So say you have an idea to write a book. I'm not a Anne, that's probably why I'm not an author. However, should I get some little glimpse of a book that should be, should be written, then it's just get on and do it. Because if you don't, that idea will then pass through you and go on to say somebody else in her view. So and there's been evidence of this, and I think she quotes it in there about scientists like physics scientists, that's really physicists, and they're coming up with some amazing theory, and then it's also someone completely unconnected to them halfway across the world also comes up with the same theory. And
like a group consciousness type.
yeah, and it's basically she's saying about a poet in there who said that she would actually feel when she was a child or a younger working on a farm, she'd feel these ideas like horses galloping across a field in the wind.
Wow.
And she'd have to quickly run into her house and get a piece of paper and a pencil out and start writing immediately, or the idea would swish on by. And it's saying, some ideas aren't meant for you, so you can let them go. But if you don't, then somebody else will take that idea. And it's kind of that, and it's just a lovely theory. And obviously she's saying, I'm not saying this is something that, she said, because a lot of the time she's obviously a writer, and she says a lot of the time my ideas come to me from hard work, sitting down and working at my laptop like a, I think she said like working on a farm or something like that. She's like, I sit there and I have to force myself to do stuff, and it's all more about discipline. But on the odd occasion, these ideas come in, and people can be more susceptible to them. And just to take them and see where you go with them, basically.
I'd like to read
It's
it.
a
I've put it on my
lovely,
list.
lovely book. It's really, really nice. I'm quite a way through it now. I've been reading it before I go to bed.
It's quite a lot of it about
Nice
discipline anyway, because I know that lots of creatives are very
Not
intuitive.
really. Do you know what it's more about trusting your intuition. And also she comes from a family that will, she talks about her dad and saying about, and I'm not all the way through this yet at all. I'm 21% through, actually, going by my Kindle. And she talks about her dad just taking on, not worrying about how to do something. And this is what I see in a lot of people that I've looked at online that and studied, that take on ideas from, and they don't know how they're going to make them work. But they just go with it, just well, I'll just try it. And he wanted to get I don't know, be a goat farmer or something like that, so he just moved. He still kept his job but moved out to somewhere, bought a load of goats. He didn't have a clue. They put them in the back of the car and stuff like that. It's just, and he just learned as he went, rather than thinking you've got to have it all figured out. Perfectionism
cross
again.
That bridge. What's that?
Yeah.
What's that?
Cross that bridge when you get to it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's just nice. It's just a nice, whether or not you, because some people, I think, from what they're saying, is like like you say, they live really intuitively, and they can just all these ideas will come to them, and you can just sit. Like you hear some artists like, I simply can't paint. I can't paint. Not today. Like I've seen. And then 2 years later they'll come out with this masterpiece. But also saying that some people get some of these writers that she knows, and she quotes somebody that I don't know, and I can't see it at the moment, saying that they wrote one masterpiece. I can't think of the author's name or what the book was called. They wrote a masterpiece and then that was it. But they had such a creative mind, because they were told, like, well, you're never going to come, you're never going to beat that book. And it's like, we shouldn't be doing it to what's the top of the tree anyway, and you shouldn't be doing things to. And she also says, actually, about other people, like you shouldn't do things like, say you're going to write a self-help book, say, for other people. It's more like you should be writing it for your sort of, to help you rather than other people. And then if it does help other people, then so be it.
That's what
it's a different way of thinking. It's not a line I live by, so it's really interesting to read it.
Well, that's what I think I've talked about it on here before, or I've certainly talked about it with you before. But the this Arno Stern method of painting that the kids followed when they went to their old school. And Arno Stern, I can't think who he. I think isn't he Italian? Anyway, it's a art method, but it's got it's as much about how you position the paper, so everything's up on a wall, and then they have the paints of so many different colours running down the middle of the art studio, so you just can turn around and get your paint and then go back to your painting on the wall. But more I was going to say more importantly, I don't think it is more importantly, I think it's just as important. There's no commenting on each other's art, so
Oh,
at
is
all
that what
though.
that comes from then?
Well, I don't
When
know. This Arno Stern method is quite old, but so no one's allowed to comment on anyone's art whilst it's being done or afterwards. So when the art, and then each artist has their own folder, and when they finish their work, it gets put in their folder, and no one's allowed to even look through their folder. So they can
um,
take themselves off and look through their own folder, but it's not to be shown to anyone. It's literally, the creation is literally about the process and for
mm,
themselves. I think, oh, wasn't it you I had the conversation with? And you said like journaling, or I had the conversation with someone and they said, oh, like journaling. It 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 is
getting it out,
it's
getting your
all about the
creativity out.
process, yeah,
Yeah.
rather than creating for someone else,
Yeah.
which doesn't work necessarily in this society if you want to do it as your career. But
No, but she was saying about this the author that basically never written another book again.
mm,
I really can't think of it was, so I really need to see more preparation. But yeah, she basically said about her that she'd written some manuscripts and then they were found afterwards and they were absolutely brilliant.
wow,
And yeah, but she also said about the ideas coming to her as well. One of them, and this was an idea, one of the main things that came to her in the intuitive, like whoosh type thing, and it was a completely different book. She doesn't name what it is, I don't think, in there, but she said it just came to her and she just wrote like it just flew out of her,
wow,
and it was nothing like anything she'd ever written before, and even her critiques said that it was this was just not normal writing for her. And she said no, and she said I didn't have to change um do any sort of more updates to it. It was kind of couple of changes and it was out there, because it was so intuitive and it was like it wasn't her writing it. It
mm,
was yeah,
it was,
the magic.
wow. Well, I look forward to
I
reading
just
it and
love it.
seeing
It's
what I
really
can become.
nice. Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
so is it
I'm
inspiring?
really
It
enjoying
sounds
reading it.
inspiring.
Yeah, it's a nice one to read before you go to bed,
Oh, good.
to like sleep on it. Although I can't remember my dreams last night.
I was going to
Anyway,
say, has it
it was,
got into your
yeah, that.
dreams?
And I want it to though, because that's what the other one does, the catching the fish. That one is basically about meditating on ideas and how to get
Mm.
yourself into the dream state to do it, which is
Oh, is it
yeah.
about lucid dreaming?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Yeah.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
how
coming
to
up
get
quite a lot in my life, actually.
yeah. I know, and this is why I'm like these two books. This book has been
Mm,
sitting there for I've bought it probably 2 years ago, the Catching the Fish one, and then the Big Magic came to me, and I was like, right, time to take a bit of notice now.
yeah.
Hence, I'm making the effort to read this, and I've probably got a million other books I could be reading.
Well, there are a million books that we could all be reading. So you might as well start with one.
Yeah,
Then you can move on to the
but no, I
next
mean,
one.
I'm just really
Mm,
enjoying it. I just think it's a really lovely book and on beliefs that I wouldn't necessarily think about, or there's stuff that you kind of hear people saying, and then but it's explained so well in here.
yeah,
Like the ideas thing, ideas coming to people, because like I've spoken to you about this before about Spanx, haven't I?
yeah. But
And
you
I've said to
invented
you, I
them
was like,
first.
yeah. I was telling Sean about it last night. She just looks at me like I'm crazy because I was trying to explain this book to her because I was really excited. And anyway, and I just get a blank stare.
You are the original Spanx creator.
I wish I was. She's amazing. But it just goes to show she didn't have a clue what she was doing. She didn't have a
Mm,
lot of money back in. I think she had $5,000 in savings and an idea. And she just I think she had to go to like however many different factories and people just laughing her out of there before they actually took on what she said and was like, and made the product for her. She
Have
didn't know
you
what she was doing. She just got started.
have you read the Joe Malone book?
Yes, I have. Yes,
Is
that's
that good?
amazing.
Because a few
Yeah,
people
it
have
is really
mentioned
good.
that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, because she sold her name, didn't she, when she got cancer, and I think I don't know if it was before or after, but she sold her brand to, I'm not sure if it was one of the big known, maybe it was Selfridges or something like that. But she actually sold all of her actual name, so she can't. That's why I think now her brand is called Love Joe,
Ah,
because she kind of stopped creating because of all of what was going on. I read it a long time ago, so I'll probably stand to be corrected. But it's rich. Her book's really
oh,
inspirational
so
about
it's
how
not new.
she.
A few people have mentioned it
No,
recently. Mm.
yeah, no, I read it years ago because I can't. It stuck with me because it was so inspiring how she started off. She started off making soaps in her kitchen.
Oh,
Um,
right.
yeah, and built it into this, billion pound empire. But then sold it because I don't know if she sold it because she got ill or it was before she got ill.
Mm.
But then she was like, well, I've got nothing to do now. But she lost her sense of smell as well,
Oh,
which was
not
obviously a
helpful when
main,
that's what you.
yeah,
Yeah.
when that's what you do. So she lost her sense of smell, and it started. I think she was on holiday somewhere, and her sense of smell started coming back, and she was like, "Oh, I know, I like that." And then thought I need to get back into doing it, but she'd already sold her name. So she was like, big thing there. Never sell. If you're selling a brand,
Yeah.
don't sell your name.
Well, there you go. So what are we talking
Very
about
interesting.
today? 20 minutes into the
Oh yeah.
to the
Well, it does lead well into what we were talking about, doesn't it, before, about what we actually want to talk about, which was our
which both of us got different.
communication. Have we done
We
communication? Yeah.
haven't. We have miscommunicated. We haven't miscommunicated,
Well,
have we?
no,
With
it's what
this.
we've taken. You go. Go on.
Well, I can remember what happened. So you were messaging me about how you suddenly have become aware that Pete has no inner monologue,
Yeah.
and I have. Um,
Well, no, he just doesn't. It's not that he doesn't have anything. It's just he
oh,
doesn't have as much
yeah,
as
okay. So
we apparently do.
he has an inner monologue, but
And he
it's
does,
not
and he also
active all
think
the time.
no, and he is audio and visual as well. Because I was like, oh, because obviously some people,
Yeah,
and and he learnt this through training, that what you don't have voices, and voice is my voice
yeah,
before or conversations. Because Pete rightly
yeah,
said he replays conversations of other people's voices, people he's spoken to, not
yeah.
people just knocking around in there. Um, who said that? That's not even funny though, is it? Some people. So
Well, it's not.
hopefully they
No,
won't listen to this.
it's not something to be joked about.
No.
But
All
it's
that.
also important to make people aware that you're talking about your own.
Yes.
It's always their
Yes.
own, though,
Yeah.
unless you follow that
Yes.
guy
No.
who thinks
Yeah.
not. That's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Oh, we should do
Okay,
one on that.
so you're Pete, and then I said that Matt's the same. They
Mm.
don't. Their inner monologue takes a breath,
Yeah.
unlike ours. And so then our conversation moved on to you feeling like you're addicted to being busy.
Mm.
And I said we should talk about that on the podcast, and you said yes. And I was meaning people with no inner monologue
All
or an
right.
inner
Photographic
monologue,
memory.
and you were meaning um, being addicted to busy.
Mm.
But they came from the same conversation. So
Yeah.
um, we have realised that some people don't talk to themselves on, like, some people don't have the radio on all the time. They're in
No.
a
I know.
radio,
Yeah. Constant noise.
and some people do,
Mm.
and we do.
And then, yeah, we do. And I said, I basically showed him my Microsoft Notes, not an
Mm,
ad, and I said. I said, look, this is what goes on. Never mind the spreadsheet I've got that backs that up that I have to put stuff into.
yeah,
So I just and he was just like, oh God, no. He was like, no, no, no. And then so I spent the weekend. He'd hurt his leg, so I spent the weekend. We didn't do a lot this weekend, apart from we like went on one dog walk and then sort of came back and were just watching films and things like that this weekend, so it's quite a nice, actually. Yeah, so I did chill out this weekend, and it was but I was sitting there, I was going, tell me when thoughts come into your head and what they are. So he was just like, oh, I've just had another thought. It was very intermittent. And
Oh.
then, yeah, so then
So
he would
see, I'd
say,
be thinking about the thinking,
yeah, I said, whilst we're sitting there watching a
metacognition.
film, I'm on ChatGPT saying, all right, I've got this idea. Can you
Yeah,
remember this?
yeah.
And and oh yeah, and
Mm.
this is this is something I should talk about, and some I need to do this, and I'm putting things in lists, and all whilst I'm watching this film. I can't just sit there and watch a film now. But is that the phone distracting me, or my mind?
Oh, I think that's a problem, isn't it? That
Mm.
you're not the only person with. Oh well, I've got that
Would
problem,
I
but
write it
someone was
down though?
saying
I'd
to me the
probably
other day.
no. I'd used to have a note and a pen and paper, and
Yeah,
I'd write things down.
but for years I don't now because I don't have one, but I'd have sat with a laptop on my lap doing stuff whilst
Yeah.
watching TV. I can remember when Matt and I first met, we'd have watched TV without. I probably wouldn't have had a laptop. Probably like 20 years ago.
Mm. The BlackBerry ruined it for me, I think, because you had email and you could. You remember me and my BlackBerry? It took me. I was kicking and screaming into the Apple.
Mm.
I
Well,
loved it.
me,
I loved a BlackBerry.
yeah, me too. I did as well. I obviously transitioned before you, I believe, but um, I also loved a BlackBerry.
Mm. But I think
Um,
that's what that was instant messaging then, wasn't it? And and it was like, oh,
mm,
instant messaging to see when someone was typing.
yeah. So
So was
so
that
what's
is
going
that
on?
our downfall?
Do you know
It
what?
was
And
like
I think what I said to you when we were
because we
talking about
can think
this.
about stuff.
Well, but these people who are like this, who are well,
The Mats and Pete's of the
the
world.
Mats and Pete's of the world, they are they are basically what every meditator is trying to achieve.
Yeah. But also another thing is I concluded over the weekend is Pete has made his life very simple for a reason. Nothing's complicated for him.
That's what that's also was the point, wasn't it? That
Mm.
um yeah,
Like yesterday, I signed up to do another course. I'm like, oh, because I haven't got enough to do at the moment. But I was like, oh, that's good. I should do that.
yeah,
Like,
and I think actually that I
it's
have
something that's not to do with normal day job stuff, but it's still, why? Why did you do that? You haven't got enough time, really.
yeah, and you're right, and I think that probably you should have started off this podcast because it wasn't about you being addicted to being busy. It was about them having no inner dialogue because they're living they're fulfilling their natural needs.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. Because he goes out and does stuff and builds things like, yeah, I tell you what I've forgotten that he'd done on Thursday. He'd gone and chopped a tree down in his garden because it was pulling up his um garage. And I don't know, I was like, can't we replant it somewhere? Can't you get somebody around to take it down? Because it was a beautiful palm tree. And he's like, well, I don't want to get it. But then he got out there and I was like, well, you didn't use any mechanical? No, you got a sawed down.
Yeah,
So yeah, and you're right. And he goes and stays over and does things outside a lot. He spends a lot of time outside,
well, he does. From
even in work. He's
uh,
outside.
and I remember Pete like camping on the side of mountains and
Yeah, mm,
just in his tent, in his sleeping bag. And
yeah. Not so much that anymore. He's a little bit older now, isn't he?
is he too old? Has he got too old for that?
It gets too cold now. So now it's the van. He sleeps in the van, but he does spend a lot of time. He'll go and do things,
So,
like you say.
what would a man primarily have done in the tribal days when we
He'd
had
be out
to
getting me
live?
my dinner.
Yeah, they'd be out hunting, building a shelter,
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah,
light,
building a
doing a
shelter,
fire.
keeping us alive,
Yeah,
fending off any wild animals that were trying to kill us.
maybe fighting um, local tribes,
Yeah.
other rival tribes.
Mm. Keeping order.
This is all very simplistic. potentially it
Yeah,
wasn't that.
yeah,
This
but
talk
if we're
building
talking,
Stonehenge. I mean, some men.
are we sure that the men built Stonehenge though?
No,
Because I have other ideas
we're not.
with the aliens.
But let's
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 stick to
imagine
the
it were that the
giants.
men. Well, maybe because they're very big stones. Some that took like a lifetime to build, longer than a lifetime. I mean, many lifetimes. So some
Mm,
men would have spent their whole lifetime pulling a stone from, I
if
don't know
that's
much
how
about
they got
Stonehenge,
them.
but like Yorkshire
Up
to
north, wasn't it?
Salisbury.
Yeah. Could have been in Matt's heritage, that, couldn't
Well,
it? Could have been his
maybe
lot.
maybe that's evolved from somebody who spent their entire life pulling a stone and nothing else.
Oh, that's why.
No. So what I was thinking is that possibly we've got this whole thing going on in our heads and constantly looking for something else to do and constantly thinking and ideas and this and that because we're not really living um how our bodies are designed to live. Like we do the exercise. We're both of us are pretty good with um trying to
Meditation is one
nourish
thing
our
I could work
bodies.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
but
don't
I
think you
don't.
would have meditated. Like I don't think from an
But not in
evolutionary
that sense. Not in the
perspective.
sense of making you. Yeah, then that's the thing. And obviously Pete doesn't. Not obviously, but he doesn't meditate. I can tell you
No,
that.
well, he just does the
But
stuff.
he just does the stuff. Yeah.
And I think that if we were doing the stuff, we might not be looking for more stuff.
Mm.
Because I think Matt, not so much now, but he certainly has to collect logs and chop logs,
Yeah.
and is outside a lot as well.
Mm.
And I think that we're not.
Mm.
What should we be doing
Not
more?
in that sense of doing. I don't know. See, I tell you what, when I've been making my peacock, and sort of thought I need something else to do that's not related to work or studying or anything like that. So I've kind of not forced myself, but I like doing art stuff. So I just think, right, what's something that I could be doing that's more creative? And so I've started doing that, which I think is helped me switch off in the evenings. I've started doing little bits of that.
Hmm.
So I think that maybe creating things, but then you do a lot of creating, you do a lot of writing, don't you? So
It's
do you
still
think
not.
that that's enough? What would
I
you
don't
say
know that
is
it's
is it
still
enough or is it the right
matching.
thing?
I don't think it's
Mm,
matching. I think that some men are able to do things that actually directly align with what the human was evolved to do,
mm,
whereas I'm not
yeah.
sure. How distinct were the roles, do you think, the male and female roles? How we obviously know that um, men and women evolved differently.
But not all, if we're looking at those sort of times, the primitive, but how far back do you go? I mean, you listen to Graham Hancock, there's a lost civilization somewhere there. But yeah, how far back do you go and what was even real? It's all theory anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, but I don't think that there was. Well, yeah, if you go to the lost civilization idea, he believes that there were technology greater than our technology, right?
Mm.
But did
Yeah.
we evolve from those? Does he believe
Mm, oh,
we
yeah.
evolved from those beings, or did we evolve from different types of beings?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I'd love to speak to Graham Hancock one on one.
Would you love to go back though? I'd like to go back to the older style of humans.
Yeah. Didn't they find some footprints somewhere the other week of dinosaurs or big mammals next to children's feet, and it showed them there was like footprints they found somewhere.
So they lived alongside each other,
It
like
looks
we
like
have
that, yeah.
dogs.
Mm. Can you imagine? My dog's big enough, never mind him.
Imagine
He
having
would be happy.
a woolly mammoth
Yeah, exactly.
as your
Putting that on a
friend.
lead and getting that out for a walk.
No, I do. Who was it who said something like, "Oh, I don't know. Science is just an idea until the next idea comes," or something
Mm.
like that. So
Well, yeah. We watched Oppenheimer, which I didn't know much about beforehand, and it's the physicist who created the atomic bomb, and it's basically, yeah, it was saying about how everything was theory until they've come up with this idea, and he had this idea floating around, and then it was when they went to everything's theory, and they didn't really know what it was going to do or how, obviously the massive impact it would have on the whole world. And also, I didn't know that Albert Einstein lived until 1955. Whole new learning curve watching
that's
Oppenheimer,
when
I
my
tell you.
house was built.
Oh, maybe Einstein was, well, yeah, I didn't know that he was around until that time.
No, I didn't have any idea. I wouldn't have even considered when he was around.
It was only because he was in this film, and then I was on ChatGPT getting it to explain bits I didn't understand about history.
Well, that's another place my thoughts haven't been.
But yeah,
So tell me about You're Addicted to Busy. I'm
I just
addicted to
think
busy as well, obviously. But
I feel if ever like this weekend, when I had a really lazy weekend because Pete's leg was, so we still went out for a walk, but then we sat down and we watched like some trash TV and stuff like, and I just feel guilty sitting there. I'm like, there's always something I could be doing, and I think I just feel so. It's obviously the relaxed state. When do you fully switch off? And I was talking to somebody else about this yesterday, and she's going away for a week. She's got her own business, and she's going away for a week tomorrow. And she's like, "Oh, but I don't know. It'll take me a while to switch off because I just sit there thinking about work the whole time and things I could be doing." Even though she can't physically do her work hands on, so she can't actually do her work from um, when she's not there in person. But it's still, I don't think it's uncommon for people to not be able to switch off from things or always think that they could be doing something else rather than just being in a relaxed state.
is your constant inner monologue always work?
Yeah.
What about when you're not doing your own stuff? Is it then still about work?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's more the performance side of things. Like, I want to be really good at stuff. So if I,
Do you want to be the best?
everything, or as best I can be, I suppose, because I haven't been perhaps in the past. So, it's more now with a greater awareness. Maybe it's all my ideas catching up with me now from years of drinking where they were suppressed.
So do you never have an inner monologue about well, anything else? Like what if you're doing something when you're on a course, for example,
Yeah.
what's your inner monologue then?
Oh no, I'm fully engrossed in what I'm doing. I can concentrate on the thing that, is that what you mean? Sorry.
No, like I don't know. The inner monologue. If you're always thinking about work, I get that.
Yeah.
But
Or
is
something. I
there
wouldn't
ever?
say necessarily it's always
Yeah, that's
work.
what I mean. What else? So
It's
what
always,
else?
yeah, there's I don't know, books that I'm reading, like this book. I won't stop thinking about this today because I can't wait to read it tonight.
Yeah.
So I'll be thinking about obsessing over things like that, like, oh,
What's
so I'll
going to
have to
come
read it.
next?
Yeah.
Excited.
And then, yeah, excited. And then, yeah, so that's the kind of thing that I'll be thinking about. Like, if one thought goes, there's another one waiting there to take over.
What about self? So I did I had my first week of I'm doing my authentic relating training
Yes.
level 2, and I had the first week last night
How was
online.
it?
Yeah, really good. But there's like, oh, I don't know, maybe 15 people on the course, something like that. And there's quite a lot of it's authentic relating, so we're trying to relate
And I was
authentically.
going to say, so what does that
Yeah,
actually mean?
well, lots of I can tell you, if I can remember, the 5 principles of authentic relating. I say I will tell you by remembering. I won't tell you by remembering. I'll actually actively look it up. They do come in an order. So the first one is welcome everything. So that's about anything that comes into the space into the relationship, if you like,
Yeah,
you welcome that, regardless of what it is, whether you don't like it or something, you welcome it. Assume nothing. So the facilitator on this one kind of clarified that as human beings, what did she call us? Assumption machines. So
it's true.
she clarified that we need assumptions for survival. So it's not necessarily about not making any assumptions, but just checking your assumptions.
Yeah.
Own your experience. So
Oh,
yeah, now this one is
what?
really,
So your own experience rather than, oh, so and
yes,
so triggered me. It's more,
yes,
well, that's on you then. Or
own, yeah, exactly that.
is that what
Own,
that means? I don't know. I
yeah,
don't know if I understand it right.
exactly. So recognizing that in a relationship something may happen, but your experience of that happening is your experience.
Mm.
It, it's
Yeah.
it's separate from the experience of the other person, and so it's about owning it and saying, this has happened, and as a result of this happening, this is happening for me right now,
Mm.
rather than you did that or you made me feel, or um yeah. So hearing someone else's experience, and then it's okay to, well, part of this is then explaining what that feels like for you.
And then like, so obviously you're talking to other people about this. How does that span out in that? Do you discuss that this is what you're actually, or do you don't discuss that because
Yeah,
you've
we
been told?
do.
Is that like a rule?
What do you mean?
So if you have to own your own experience, do you then say to somebody, like, say they say something and it does trigger you,
Mm.
do you actually not say anything? Because that's,
No, you do.
do you know what I mean?
You
Yeah.
might say in authentic relating language, you might say something like, oh, I'm having a visceral reaction to
Oh, okay, yeah. So you do
that
explain,
word.
but you explain what that is in that term rather than using the word trigger or blah blah blah. You'll say, "Oh, I'm have you." So that's how you own the experience, then.
Yeah, so one, like
Yeah, I get it.
yesterday, one girl,
Mm,
we were talking about this actually, and one
mm,
girl said for her it means recognizing that you might say one thing and someone else might say another thing, and both things might be completely different, and you might not agree with either thing, but both things are beautiful in their own way.
yeah.
And another girl popped up and said, wow, when I heard you say the word beautiful, that felt really like a big blow to me, she said, because
Oh,
yeah, she was like, I
I thought
don't
you just get
feel.
that for that.
I know. I thought it sounded
Oh,
lovely. When this girl said this, I was like, oh, that's so poetic and lovely. And
that's what
then,
I do. Oh,
yeah.
you're
And
amazing.
this girl was like, it felt like a big, how did she describe it? Yeah, just like a big, like, pow inside of me. She said,
Oh,
because I don't feel like what someone else um, has to say I don't feel like what someone else says has to be beautiful for me to own my own experience. And I think we might have been then the next part of authentic relating is honor yourself and honor others.
mm.
And so with all of
What does
this,
that mean?
that
Honor
means
yourself and honor others.
respecting your own needs and respecting the
Mm,
needs of others.
yeah.
So
So it's not all about you. It's not all about me.
exactly, it's about me honoring what I need, but also respecting
Yeah.
what you need, and us being able to be open to and share our own needs so that both
Mm,
can be met.
mm.
But what was interesting is we had a few exercises, and there was one exercise where you had to um, share something, and then you had to call on someone else to share. So the
Mm.
facilitator started, and she said it was
Potato.
welcoming something. So you had to share something that wouldn't always be welcoming groups, and welcome it in terms of something about yourself.
Oh,
So people said a variety of things, like I'm welcoming
like
my
what?
um,
Mm.
lots of people said things like I'm welcoming I've got CPTSD and I'm welcoming my CPTSD, and someone was like, I'm welcoming my neurodivergent brain that might behave like this but actually means this, and I'm welcoming my sensitivity, and I'm welcoming my fear of judgment, I'm welcoming my
Okay.
anxiety, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's those things that you might not particularly love about yourself or might not particularly want to exhibit, but it's saying, it's kind of naming them. This is who I am, this is how I am, and I'm going to welcome it rather than trying to hide it.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is it got, and I suffer from this, when you have to pick someone, and I feel like I'm very often the
What do you
last to
mean?
be
You had
picked.
to.
No, it's not the
Oh,
picking. The
it's being picked.
It's being picked, and it's
Yeah, I
like
remember
that
you
being
saying this
picked at
before, that this
school.
was a thing for you. Yeah.
Well, I was never picked for the sports teams at school. You know, I mean,
I was a captain, so I did the picking.
well, of course, of course you were.
I'd have
How
picked
was your
you
inner dialogue
every
then?
day. Yeah, you had one then. Yeah.
Well, there you go, because you were doing all this
Oh, there you go.
sport.
I need to go back to doing competitive sports.
Yeah. So I was obviously rubbish at sport, and well,
Why,
I don't know.
obviously?
Maybe I was just, well, because I was never picked, or maybe I was just invisible. But no one ever picked. Like when they do that awful thing at school where they have the team captains, and then they have to pick all the people, and there's always a couple. It's always that horrible thing of, am I going to be the last one standing, which you wouldn't have experienced as the team
Yeah, I'd
captain.
have put you in goal.
Thanks. Anyway, so it's a bit
I'd have
like
picked you
that.
first and put you in goal.
And we were going through, as it were, yesterday. I was probably picked somewhere around the middle. I felt good, but
Ah,
as we were going through, everyone else was in very neutral clothing, and I was in this like coral coloured top. And I was thinking to myself, if I get to the end, I'm going to be like, what actually is this about? Because I can't be invisible, because I'm in a bright coral top. I'm the only one in a bright coral top. If you look at this screen, sure, fine, you've got like 15, 16 different little boxes in front of you. You just pick one. But there's only one that's in bright pink. Like that must be.
yeah.
And so I was thinking, surely I
Did you
cannot
wear
be that
that to
invisible.
stand out, though?
No. But
No,
anyway,
I'm just wondering beforehand
no, I
if you
didn't.
thought,
But maybe it's a good idea. Perhaps I will next time, because I did get picked. I did
put a
get
hat
picked
on.
midway. But this is what is interesting. The person after me said, I'm welcoming my um, discomfort with the being picked. It feels like when you're at school and you're picked. And then the next person said, I'm also welcoming that feeling. And then I was watching as they got to the end, and there was like two people left. And a few people have mentioned this feeling. And I was like, oh no. And I wanted to rescue. I was like, that's my role. I'm supposed to be the one who's last. Um, and I was thinking, I wanted to jump in and say, switch me, like, don't make them be last. It's horrible. But anyway, and there was someone who was last, and she didn't seem to care, so it was fine.
Mm,
But it was interesting to hear how all of the people had a different, well, not necessarily a different, but everyone had something that was going on for them that they were welcoming. And it was it was some kind of anxiety type, you know
mm,
fear of this, or fear of what other people think of me in some kind of way. And a lot of
yeah.
the exercises we did yesterday were that we then had to very quickly, just when the course had first started, we had to go into breakout rooms with just one other person, and we had to say, um, I think you think whatever about me. And so it was, and that was quite.
And then what, do they have to give you their honest feedback on what they really
No,
think about you?
no, 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 no. Then they share impact. So this is the owning your own experience. So I would say, like, I think you think I'm talking too much. And then you do that for a whole minute and a half, different things.
Yeah. Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
is that
now.
good? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's perfect.
So
Sorry.
I for a minute and a
It's
half.
all my fault.
It's actually me. I know it's me, because I saw it last night as well. But I'm not taking responsibility for the internet. Sorry, sorry. Sorry
So,
that I'm not
no,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're sorry. Yeah.
So for a minute and a half, I had to say to someone, I think you think I am. I think you think about me. And then that person had to say, spend a minute afterwards saying, when you were saying that, I was feeling. When you
Mm.
said that, I was feeling. It's impact. They call that impact. So share the impact of what was said. Um, but anyway, my point really was there's a lot of people with a lot of inner
You've
dialogue.
gone again.
Am I back? Am I here? I don't like not being able to see that.
Don't
It
blame
bothers
me.
me. Um, so the point where I was going with this was there's a lot of people with a lot
No,
of
you're going again.
oh
I don't think it's a
Jesus.
camera. What is your point?
Fuck's sake.
Get to your point.
Anyway, let me go back to what to my point.
Yeah, can
My
you get to your
point
point?
is
God, it's been 3 minutes. I've counted it. 4 minutes nearly.
3 minutes of me going,
Christ.
my point is I don't even know what my point is anymore. I've lost the
Oh, it's nearly
point.
daylight. The sun's
I've
rising.
lost my mind. What?
Right, that's 48 now.
We don't do this in daylight. It's like Cinderella.
Or vampires. I must go.
We
The
only
night
come
is coming.
we,
Pull down the blinds.
we only come out at night
Pull yourself together. Come on.
trying to fulfill our natural needs. Um, lots of people have assumptions inner lots of not assumptions. Oh my goodness. Lots of people have an inner
49.
dialogue and it's all right, this can stay in, it's funny. This is what people like. This is what people are coming for. They're going,
This is
finally
why this is
stopped
why we've got a million tabs open because Juliet can't get to the point.
stopped going around in bloody circles talking about evolution
Oh,
and we should know nothing about
and
Graham
big
Hancock
magic.
and other civilizations.
Um,
Just laugh, damn it. Um uh what was I saying?
oh my God, I don't know because you get to the point. I
Lots of
definitely wouldn't
people
pick you for my team.
lots,
Back of the class.
maybe this was the problem. Lots of
I'd
people have
avert
an
my eyes,
inner
pretend I hadn't seen you.
you'd stop interrupting me. Okay,
Oh.
just set a timer for a minute and don't speak for that minute. Lots of people have an inner dialogue that's that is worrying about themselves or negative judgments that they're putting on themselves or assumptions that other people have about them. Is your inner dialogue ever anything like that?
I don't even know what you just said. Yes, it is. Yeah, I replay things, like situations, definitely,
Mm,
and I think, oh, but it's funny. I don't think I'd. And see, this is something I've questioned before. Is it to do with hormones? Like, because I think you've said this as well.
mm.
Because I didn't give a shit when I was younger. I didn't really care. I didn't really think. I don't think I did think like this.
Yeah, but that from an evolutionary perspective would make sense because it's all about being kicked out of the tribe, isn't it? So I
Mm,
believe that inner judgment and that fear of what others think, because we do not want to be kicked out of the tribe. We need to be accepted by our tribe.
yeah.
Um, and when you're a child, generally, well, maybe again from an evolutionary perspective, no child is going to be kicked out of the tribe. That's not actually how it is now, is it? Because some children are rejected by their,
Well, yeah, I don't
their
think I was
familiar.
particularly
Yeah,
accepted by my tribe. So,
but
tribe.
perhaps there's not a kind of from an evil. Do you know? Just remember, I always just go back to the fact that we are animals with primitive brains. Like we're not
Mm,
computers, and so everything that's going on inside of our brains is based on a survival. Even if it's a modern day problem, it's a
yeah.
survival.
And like what you're saying now about the productivity stuff, like I read a load of books on like things to do with productivity, and I see these youngsters youngsters. I sound like an old lady. Well, I am an old lady. But yeah, I see a lot, and I'm like, no, I can't work like that. I can't. I come from the old school of writing notes down and ticking off a list type thing.
Mm.
And I do, I use Microsoft Notes to I suppose order what's in my mind in a way, and then and try and get it out so that it's not floating around my mind. But then I see these other, and they overcomplicate things. Like I don't know if you've tried to use Notion, but it's just not for my. So are the youngsters now that are coming into this world growing up in a computer state mindset, so therefore they can order their thoughts into, are they getting put into a computer mindset when ours was more natural, and now we're being forced to go into this?
Do
I
you write down your
don't
thoughts
know.
as well, the ones that are not work, like that we just talked about, that inner
Yeah,
dialogue
yeah,
that's worrying
that's what
about
I actually
things?
write down in my academic diary, page a
Mm.
day. Yeah, that's what
You've not
that's
mentioned
what
that
I
before.
write. Just say it's all there. Yeah, so I do write stuff down that's not work related. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there
Do
isn't
you? Do you journal?
a
Journal.
well, not very regularly, but sometimes.
Yeah.
I will use that. That is a go-to if I need to.
And saying that, Pete does write down. He's very particular about things that he writes down. Like at work, he's got a notebook for work, and he'll write down what stuff he's done. So he gets his stuff out immediately, I suppose, when it comes to anything
Ah.
that could be complicated. I'm just thinking now, is he as simple as he like? Are things as simple for him? But
Well, that's where I think we were initially going with this, that I'm not quite sure it's just that simple. I'm not sure necessarily that these people who aren't constantly talking to themselves in their minds are actually just living in a way that's meaning that their brain doesn't need to do that. And they've actually maybe
yeah,
got it
naturally
sussed and
they do it,
sorted. Yeah. And then there's people like us who are muddling through trying to work it all out,
making things more complicated.
making things more complicated, making ourselves too busy trying to achieve what is essentially what we need, just a very, very simple life.
Mm, yeah.
Although that does scare me. Does that scare you? I'd really worry that I'd find that I, like not achieving enough.
Yeah, I can't see me ever not wanting to do anything like beach holidays. Like as much as I could do a couple of days on a beach, I think, in the sunshine, but then I'd probably get a bit, right, come on then. I don't think I could just anymore. I used to.
Is it a big, do you ever watch Ben Fogle Lives in the Wild?
No.
Uh, so they live,
Did that-
can't really talk about it then,
no.
can we? They, so basically he goes and visits people who have decided to live a life in the wild. They're
Yeah.
often not necessarily that wild, but essentially simplified living. So they're
Mm.
very often
Like
abroad.
homestead types.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
very often abroad. Like he saw a family. The last one we watched was a family in Bulgaria, and they'd bought, this incredibly rundown shack, basically, but with a ton of land for £7,000. I think Matt said it was on the Bulgarian-Greek border. Um, and they were, rebuilding this house, and the kids went to school, but they had their own. They provided for themselves from a food perspective. Um, I think they worked on the computer. She did social media or something for people, and
Mm.
but he was very much spending his life building, rebuilding the house. She was, and he did, grew the food and stuff. But it was just a simple existence. And he's
Mm.
visited people who live in vans, doing a similar kind of thing. It's that just that simple life. But whilst it's simple, it's still a bit extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Compare because it is maybe how we should all be living, or how we all would have lived
And
thousands of
moving
years ago.
about
But
as well. Do you think like, like they say that, people took pilgrimages and people moved around and did more, didn't just stay in one place
mm,
necessarily. Some, you know,
yeah,
is there something in that?
Yeah, I'm sure. Because they were nomadic.
Mm.
Yeah, and what about women as well? I think women would have spent much more time as a group together. I have a sense of what it was like back then, and I've pulled some different aspects from different. Like I'm thinking of the Red Tent book, where she's all about the women.
Oh yeah, I haven't read that yet. Yeah,
Oh, that's
but
another
you've
really
mentioned it a
lovely
number of
book.
times.
It's
Yeah,
it's it's fiction, but
yeah,
um, she's very much. It's all about. It's actually all about
yeah,
their nomadic lives as well, because they went moving through Egypt, but it's also about the women coming together in their red tent at that time of the month, and just spending time
yeah,
passing. It's a lot about the passing down of storytelling from the elders to the younger generation. um and so I think there's a lot of that we're missing out on. And then there's thinking about the what Louise Perry says in the case against the sexual revolution, about how the men would have been much more, well, we'd call it promiscuous now, but have many different partners, whereas the women would have.
yeah.
And so then there's that part of the women just kind of, and it feels very much like there would have been a much more separation in the sexes, and far less of this just being just two people together. And
Mm.
so I think that's
So do
something
you
that
think
we're lacking as females. Oh,
yeah,
crack on.
and do you think that would then help because you're talking to other women about things? Do you think it would help you order your mind more?
I wonder if you just wouldn't all of the, yeah, maybe that
Because
we'd
you'd be
miss out on.
airing, be face to face contact, and you'd be airing your concerns, say, or what was
Mm.
instead of having an inner monologue about it because you're spending a lot of time jumping from one thing to another. You'd maybe, like we do on here, talk to each other about things that are, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
you'd be
order
sharing
things.
ideas,
Yeah,
making
and
plans.
collaborating more,
Yeah, as a community,
maybe.
but also as a group. I wonder
Yeah.
if there's, and we talked before we came on about, we're separating the genders now, but before we came
Mm.
on, you kind of separated the genders in terms of this inner monologue as well, and said men don't
Mm.
men don't do it so much as women. And I said I don't think that's true. I think there are some women who don't do it either, but maybe it's easier for a man to live, how to settle the primitive brain, if you like, because there's certain things like getting logs for a fire, more things in life today that for men that match that natural life. Although I've spoken to plenty of men who
Mm.
would say not. We've talked about having this um
Oh,
uh
yes.
wood chopping workshop at the borough, and men seem, there's a lot of men who are really keen for it because they're not getting to do that stuff. But there are, working outdoors is still
Chopping trees down in the
dominated.
garden.
Yeah, it's all of that kind of stuff is still
Yeah.
dominated by men, which is, some women would say, is a bad thing, because women, can do these things too, which absolutely they can. But the men doing it is for, I feel like, is fulfilling their primitive needs, whereas perhaps women aren't necessarily fulfilling our primitive needs in the same way.
Yeah. Well, so what's the roundup then? What do we
What's
need
our
to do to,
conclusion? I don't know.
yeah, what more listening to more ideas that come in, or actioning ideas that you've got. A lot of people sit on ideas, don't they? They'll sit on them
Well,
and
I
don't
think,
actually do anything with them. Fear of failure.
yeah, maybe if your inner monologue is a problem, it's obviously, seems to be a good idea to write it down. But if in a monologue, I wonder if it's worth experimenting with doing things, trying to fulfill some of your more natural needs, and seeing whether the inner monologue
Mm.
calms down.
Yeah,
It's all an experiment.
let's test it.
Life is one big experiment.
Right then.
Shall we let everyone go?
You're
There you
free.
go.
Of life with friendship as our guide, together we'll grow, 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 grow. Grow together we'll grow, grow, grow.